Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we are stepping into a workspace that is, well, defined by chaos, change, and some pretty high stakes. The active construction site.
It really is the ultimate dynamic environment. I mean, think about it. An office stays the same. A construction site changes every single day.
The routes shift, the hazards move.
Then the number of people on site can vary dramatically. This is not a place where some generic off-the-shelf emergency plan is going to work.
Exactly. So our mission today is to give you a clear roadmap, a kind of blueprint for what makes an emergency evacuation plan, an EEP, actually comprehensive and, life-saving in this specific environment.
Right.
This isn't about just checking a box. It's about giving you a shortcut to being really well-informed on a topic where, frankly, half measures can be lethal.
And if you look at the sources, the main takeaway is that a great EEP has to be clearly communicated, it has to be constantly updated, and maybe most importantly, it has to be regularly practiced.
Practiced by everyone.
By everyone on site. So we've sort of synthesized all the requirements into 5 critical pillars. There's administration, so the roles, communication, which is the lifeline, then routes, procedures, and finally scenarios, for the unexpected.
Okay, so when the unexpected does hit, panic is the enemy of action. That's why that human structure, who is in charge, that has to be set in stone long before any alarm ever sounds. So let's start with those designated roles. Who needs to be identified?
You need a dedicated hierarchy. The plan has to explicitly name and assign roles like first aid officers, evacuation teams, sometimes called fire wardens, and most critically, the incident controller.
Let's pause on that one. An incident controller versus, say, a fire warden. They sound kind of similar, but I'm guessing their roles in the middle of chaos are very different.
Oh, they absolutely are. Think of the incident controller as the general manager of the entire emergency. It's usually a senior site manager. This is the person who assesses the emergency, coordinates with first responders, and this is key. They're the only one authorized to make that final, non-negotiable call to evacuate the entire site.
And the fire wardens, what are they doing?
They're the on-the-ground marshals. They're managing smaller sections, making sure workers actually leave, checking bathrooms or locked rooms, and, guiding people along the right routes to the assembly point.
So they manage the people, the controller manages the overall strategy.
Exactly. That clear chain of command is what stops people from standing around wondering if it's a false alarm or if they should grab their tools.
I can see how that whole structure just collapses without practice.
Precisely. Which brings us to training and drills. The documents are very clear on this. They have to be regular, not just once a year, and they have to be realistic.
What does a realistic drill look like?
Well, if you only ever practice evacuating on a sunny day when every exit is clear, you haven't really prepared for an emergency. A realistic drill might block the primary exit route, or it might simulate poor lighting. It forces people to get familiar with the backup plans, with those secondary assembly points.
Because if the first time you're trying to figure that out is when a real fire is breaking out, you're already way behind the curve.
You're relying on luck at that point. The drills need to be so ingrained that every single person, from the most senior foreman to the newest subcontractor who just showed up that day, knows the procedure without even having to think.
Okay, so let's move on to the second pillar. Communication. Everything kicks off with the alarm. What kind of specifics are required for that initial signal?
The EEP has to define the alarm system very clearly. Is it an air horn? A siren? A special kind of bell? The real insight here is that the signal must be distinct.
Distinct from what?
From all the other noise on a construction site. Workers are used to hearing bells for lunch, backup alarms on trucks, horns for cranes. The evacuation signal has to cut through all of that and be instantly recognizable as the top priority.
Makes sense. So once that alarm sounds, the focus shifts to communicating with the outside world. And it's not enough to just say, call 911. Why is location information such a specific challenge on a construction site?
Because sites, especially new developments, often don't have clear street signs or a single obvious entry point. Emergency services need precision.
Right.
So the posted information has to include, first, the specific unambiguous site address. That could even mean GPS coordinates or which gate number to use for staging.
Because the main access gate might change week to week?
Daily, sometimes.
Right.
And the second piece of mandatory location detail, the address and a map to the nearest medical facility.
Ah, so you don't waste time trying to figure that out during a medical emergency.
Exactly. Time is everything. That list of contacts and locations has to be posted everywhere.
And what about the communication during the evacuation itself? How do the controller and the wardens talk to each other?
Yeah, the EEP has to lay that out. It's usually two-way radios or maybe a dedicated mobile phone network. These are absolutely vital for the incident controller to get real-time updates from the wardens.
Like Zone C is clear, or we can't find someone.
Precisely. That feedback loop is what allows them to maintain control when everything else feels like it's falling apart.
Okay, so that brings us to the physical logistics. The plan requires detailed site maps. These aren't just for show, they're critical guides. What do these maps have to show?
They need to be easy to read and posted in all the main work areas, and they have to show the primary and secondary evacuation routes, all the emergency exits, where the firefighting equipment is, and of course the exact location of the assembly points.
You mentioned firefighting equipment. I've seen the term standpipe on some plans. What is that exactly?
A standpipe is basically a permanent pipe that runs vertically through a building while it's being built. It lets the fire department connect their hose at the ground level.
And get water to the upper floors.
Right, without having to drag hundreds of pounds of hose up 20 flights of stairs. It's a critical piece of infrastructure that workers need to know is there, but also stay clear of.
Got it. Now, about the exit routes themselves, why are the rules for keeping them clear so strict on a construction site?
Because construction is messy. It's constantly generating debris, tools are everywhere, materials are being moved. The sources all emphasize that exit routes have to be marked and lit, but the big rule is they have to be kept completely clear of obstructions.
And that means no temporary staging either.
No temporary anything.
So if I just set a stack of drywall there for, I don't know, 3 minutes while I go grab something, what's the real harm?
The harm is how fast an emergency happens. I mean, in a real crisis, you've got smoke, maybe the lights are out, people are stressed. That temporary stack of materials is now a totally unexpected trip hazard.
It creates a bottleneck.
It creates a bottleneck, it can cause a pileup, a catastrophic injury. On a dynamic site, temporary can become a permanent deadly obstacle in a split second.
That's a powerful way to put it. I'm guessing redundancy is key here, too.
Absolutely. The plan has to identify at least 2 separate exit routes from every major work area. You can't rely on just one. And then those routes have to lead to the assembly points or muster points, which have their own strict criteria.
Which are?
They have to be a safe, open area, far away from the site itself, clear of busy streets, and big enough to hold everybody safely while you do the head count.
All right, we've covered the logistics. Let's get into the immediate procedures. The alarm goes off. What's the very first thing a worker needs to do, besides staying calm and heading for an exit?
Okay, so after immediately stopping work, the next critical step is hazard mitigation. Workers need to be trained to turn off any equipment or utilities that could become a secondary hazard. But, and this is a big but, only if it is absolutely safe to do so.
Right, don't be a hero. Prioritize getting out.
Always. But if it is safe, what are we talking about shutting down?
What are these critical operations?
We're talking about heavy machinery cranes, excavators that could swing or roll if left on. We're talking about welding equipment, pressurized gas lines, any specialized power sources that could ignite or explode if they're left running unattended.
And for any project that's going vertical, what's the one absolute rule?
Do not use the elevators, ever.
Why not?
They can get stuck, the power can cut out, they can become traps. Always use the stairs or other designated emergency descent methods.
So once people get to that assembly point, this is where the planning really gets tested. Accountability, the head count. What's so unique about this process on a construction site?
It's just the sheer complexity of who's on site. It's not just your full-time employees. You have to account for all personnel. That means subcontractors, delivery drivers, visitors, everyone.
So who's responsible for tracking all these different people?
The responsibility falls on the foreman or supervisors for their own crews. But the overall plan has to have a system, like a real-time sign-in and sign-out sheet that a designated person grabs on their way out. The goal is to confirm every single person who came onto that site is now safe at the muster point.
And if that head count comes up short, someone's missing, what's the protocol?
Time is absolutely critical. The foreman immediately reports the missing person's name and their last known location directly to the incident controller.
And no one goes back in to look for them.
Under no circumstances, you let the professional first responders handle the search and rescue.
And what about special cases? like assisting a visitor or a worker with mobility issues.
That can't be improvised. The plan has to pre-assign specific, trained people to assist anyone with disabilities. It might involve knowing where refuge areas are or how to use specialized descent equipment. It means you have to know who on your site might need that help before an emergency happens.
And finally, the ultimate safety rule,
Mm,
re-entry.
It is strictly, absolutely prohibited. You don't go back for your tools, your phone, nothing. No one re-enters that site until the incident controller, working with the fire department or police, gives the official all clear.
Okay, so we've covered fire, collapse, injury, but a truly great EEP has to anticipate threats that are specific to that particular site. What are some of those more specialized emergencies?
Right. An effective EEP has to go beyond the obvious. It has to cover things like a hazardous material or hazmat spill, which
Yeah.
is pretty common if you're using a lot of chemicals, fuels, or solvents on site.
And what about, nature with all the extreme weather events we're seeing?
Severe weather and natural disasters have to be in the plan, but this is where it gets nuanced. I mean, the procedure for an earthquake is very different from a flash flood or a tornado.
And this is where that counterintuitive idea comes in, right? The shelter in place.
Exactly. Sometimes evacuating is actually the more dangerous option.
So when would you want to seek refuge on the site instead of running from it?
You do it when the environment outside is more dangerous than being inside a protected structure. Think about a toxic chemical plume in the air or a tornado warning. Trying to run or drive away just exposes you directly to the threat.
So the EEP has to identify safe spots inside the site.
Yes, it has to detail designated structurally sound locations, maybe a windowless room or a specific reinforced stairwell where workers have to go and shelter until the all clear is given. It's a totally different mindset from get out now.
And it all comes back to that very first pillar we talked about.
Communication. The incident controller has to be crystal clear. Is the order evacuation, meaning get out and go to the muster point, or is it shelter in place, get inside, lock down, and stay put?
What a dense and critical subject. So we've really dissected the blueprint for these EEPs. It seems to come down to a balance of clearly assigned roles, those redundant, maniacally maintained evacuation routes, and rock-solid accountability with that mandatory headcount.
It's the synthesis of physical planning and human readiness. I mean, the blueprint gives you the framework for a standard evacuation, but also for those highly specialized procedures like shelter in place. And that knowledge is only valuable if it's really understood and applied.
So given that construction sites are constantly in flux, a new floor gets added, a main route gets blocked for a day, a new crew shows up, what's the single biggest question a site manager should be asking themselves about their EEP's practicality?
I think the biggest question is how do you ensure those complex procedures, like shutting down very specific equipment or the detailed plan for helping a worker with a mobility issue? How do you make sure those stay practical and up to date day to day? If your emergency drill is the exact same every single time, it's not preparing you for the real world constraints of the site as it exists today.
Right.
It really raises an important question for you to think about. Is your drill preparing you for the blueprint or for the actual changing job site you're building right now? That level of constant vigilance. Well, that's the difference between a document that sits on a shelf and a plan that actually saves lives.